Here we go. Vondrousova first serve. To the Jabeur forehand. Jabeur keeps it low. Jabeur gets a backhand into the open space. Vondrousova defends. Jabeur with a backhand down the line. Vondrousova defends. Forehand down the middle. Vondrousova backhand enough to force the error. 40-love. It's 3 championship points. Marketa Vondrousova has 3 championship points to become the Wimbledon champion. I don't think I've counted Vondrousova in for pretty much any of her matches so far. So to see her come the whole way through here, this is phenomenal. Misses the first serve though. Second serve. Here we go. Double faults on the first championship point of the match. Second championship point. We have seen her lose a 40-love lead already. Well, she did it again. First serve down the tee. Jabeur just gets it back into play. Open court. It's not enough, and Vondrousova wins the title. She is the Wimbledon champion. Marketa Vondrousova is the Wimbledon champion.
Good match point. I like a match point like that in a way.
I agree.
I mean, I loved the match point yesterday with Carlos and Daniil. But yeah, that was nice. And it was also nice looking at the team and seeing, I don't know if it's her sister or not. It's just me jumping to a conclusion there, but tearful as each point was being ticked off. But another one slips away for Ons. But maybe a word on Vondrousova. You've been big on Vondrousova most of the year, albeit not, of course, coming into this Wimbledon final or even just the Wimbledon tournament, sorry. But she's done it. I think she'd only had 3 grass court wins or something like that in her entire career before this tournament.
Yeah, it's a little frustrating because I kept picking Vondrousova for finals and titles and finals, and I didn't pick her for this one. I kept counting her out in grass. I just didn't think it was going to happen, and she's totally proven me wrong. So I still am mega surprised with that in mind, just because I didn't think she was a particularly good grass court player. I knew how good she was. She's such an awkward player to play, and if you're feeling nervous, she's going to find you out. There's no way she's going to miss some of those shots. She's just got such safety in that forehand compared to Jabeur's in particular. And that is exactly what it came down to, right, John? There was a lot of just unforced errors from Jabeur, positions where she should have been winning the point where she wasn't. That all slipped away pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest disappointment for me from Ons' perspective is that I don't think either player played close to their best. Of course, Marketa probably was a bit more solid at certain points. I mean, the unforced errors count, as Ghosty's highlighting in the chat, 32 off the racket of Ons. But I just don't think she turned up at all today. I think she clearly turned up at various points of both of her previous 2 Grand Slam finals. In fact, probably throughout large parts of it. I mean, she wins a set against Rybakina, and the Rybakina we know today is a very different sort of situation to where she was a year ago, at least in terms of her standing in the world game. And as we said as well, she played really well in that second set in the US Open in New York, could easily have forced a third, and then who knows, against a player that was just insanely good in 2022 and even parts of 2023. So I just think that there's going to be, I don't know which one's worse. I mean, she's on us. She's on it. Yeah. This one's worse than last year.
Almost definitely for me. I said at the start of the match, he shouldn't be feeling nervous from every match he's played so far. And she was nervous. And that was the difference in the end.
The thing is, the nerves can come and go. And the problem was the sort of nervousness or lack of confidence possibly just stayed throughout, whether it be when she was serving at 4-all or even in that last game of the match. You know, there were some shots that went long. She pulled the trigger far too early in one rally, I thought. And I know it's easy to be clever after the event, but she was up in the rally and she just needed to stay solid and stay up in the rally, I felt, because Vondrousova, by the way, she made, I think, half a dozen unforced errors in the first set, but just 4 in the second. And that's quite impressive. If it remained at 4, and I think it did throughout the second set. But I don't know. I just thought that Jabeur was a bit impatient at times. And when, I mean, I don't know how you get out of it. It's really difficult when you're in a rut. And like I say, it's not just nerves. It's like lack of belief. And I think there was a lack of belief from Ons today.
Yeah, she certainly didn't have that prior to the match, but then it all just unravelled. It all just unravelled really quickly, John. And
From 4-2.
I wish
even 3-1, of course, in the second set. So she's up a break 4-2 and she's up a break 3-1 in both sets. I would have liked to have seen a third set and then see them both bring it, because I don't think certainly didn't have a moment in the match where both brought it at the same time. And like I say, I think Vondrousova played much better in her previous 2 matches, for example.
Yeah, I'd agree, definitely. There was definitely
but the occasion and all that, and that's often the case.
There was a bit of that definitely from Vondrousova as well, for sure. So there was plenty of chances for Jabeur to take the initiative and kind of go ahead, but it all happened very quickly, John. Right? We've barely been on here for much more than over an hour, right?
Yeah, it was quick. And it just sort of, as you say, unraveled at various points. I think this is a deep dive analysis from Ghosty on where the unforced errors were coming from. 19 on the backhand and 13 on the forehand.
Yeah.
I believe Vanch is going to join us. In fact, I think he's here. Sorry, I do apologize. I think I can see him now. Hey, Vanch.
Hey there,
Hey,
John.
Vanch.
Hey, Jack. Hey, John.
Thank you. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Yeah. Could be better.
I knew when I was asking that. Yeah. I mean,
when we ask how are you, we don't want to know. We just
yeah.
I just gave a pretty surface level answer first, and now the second time I'll tell you how I really feel. Not particularly great. That was a shame. That hurt quite a bit to watch. It could have been a lot easier to stomach for sure. I would have preferred 7-5 in the third to what ended up being quite a damp squib, to be honest.
Yeah.
Is
that how you feel, Vanch?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, generally as analysts, you try to be as neutral as you possibly can. But I just feel like in this situation, Hans winning would be so big for the game, and just transcending the sport and taking it to places that it's never gone before. And I was just so invested in the whole outcome of this final because Hans is almost 29, and you don't know if she's ever going to get a chance like this ever again. I mean, it's. Whereas Vondrousova, this was her second major final, and obviously, if she stays healthy and injury-free, she should be seeded for every slam, and then you always have a chance. Whereas
tears, I can see this. I think there weren't tears last year. I don't remember. Maybe they were, but there's tears this year. I actually felt it going into this final, albeit over a much shorter time frame. I had sort of, I know Andy Murray got touched upon, but I also had Jana Novotná vibes in terms of. She wasn't quite as close to the Wimbledon crown a year ago, but they're going into the final. I think many people, me in particular, were ignoring the threat that Rybakina was going to pose. I know that Jack, she's getting a round of applause here. Jack, I think you might be right. This one is more painful this year.
Has to be.
Yeah.
Has to be. I mean, the level she brought into the final, she was playing so well. I think she did believe prior to the final she was going to win it, and her own game let her down. I don't know. It was quite sad to watch. It all kind of unravel the way it did. Definitely.
The first 6 games, it did feel like that as I see Marketa receive her winner's trophy. And she holds it aloft, and hats off to her. It's been a remarkable run that so few people saw coming. If you got a pound on Rybakina a year ago at the beginning of the tournament, I'd love to know who had a pound on Marketa Vondrousova lifting the trophy. Of course, she's from the Czech Republic, and we see a few glimpses of Czech-born Martina Navratilova. Yeah, I mean, the Jana Novotná thing, fortunately, over a 5-year time frame, did have a happy ending. But what you were saying there, Vanch, about how many more chances. I actually thought she wasn't going to get another chance even this year, but yeah, here she is now in the final, and she's about to speak. But I don't know if you want to elaborate on anything else I've said, Vanch. I'm just kind of reiterating what you've said.
No, I mean, I felt like, see, she wasn't like extremely nervous at the very start. Like, she was doing, tactically, she was playing the right way. She was hitting behind Vondrousova quite a bit. She
Jabeur,
was
sorry.
hitting her, backhand down the line. Well, Jabeur. And, she was 2-love, 40-15 up. And then she had those 4 break points in the fourth game. And you felt like if she just took one of those chances, she might suddenly, all that pressure just might be released and she might be able to play more freely, especially if you've consolidated your break, which she didn't get to do in this match at all, really. She never, like, consolidated a break lead in the entire match. So that was always a bit rough because, like, I mean, even in that 2-love game, when she had a game point, she just gave it away with 3 unforced errors. And you could tell she was just really tight and you could sense it in her footwork. That was the biggest thing. And I was starting to wonder if there might be like a physical issue, like just having played all those matches that she did. I mean, it was quite a route to get to the final. 4 major champions, Andreescu, Kvitova. Like, she showed so much mental toughness against Rybakina and Sabalenka from a set down, and this is just a completely different match for her because Vondrousova just is so steady. She's so reliable. She defends so well in the corners. Jabeur has to hit like 5 different, has to basically win the point 5 times in order to get the ball by Marketa, and that's what Marketa did so well. And then she also, felt a taste of her own medicine with those drop shots that Wondrous was able to hit, particularly off her backhand, and just drag Jabeur. Jabeur hasn't played someone like this all tournament, so that was a big difference in terms of like the style of match.
Iga Swiatek taking to Twitter to congratulate Marketa. Ghibli's right. Maybe we need to give a bit more credit to the Czech. Jack, why is it that you have been pretty big on Marketa throughout this year, Wimbledon aside?
There's not loads of players that have a game like hers. It's very different. I think, as Vance touched on, she's super steady, but it also helps being super steady when you're a lefty, right? So if you can go steady into the backhand of your opponent with that much margin, that much spin, a la Rafa Nadal, you're going to have a lot of joy. And there's not loads of ladies players that come to mind that have even just that lefty forehand, that much spin on it. But she's also got the variety, the drop shots are actually a weapon in her game. They're not just a novelty. She can use them really well. She used them at the French really well. She's got a lovely slice, and she's not bad off the backhand either. It's pretty clear she's got a pretty unique game in the women's, and a lot of the time that's all you need, something that stands you out from the rest of the crowd, right? Like Ash Barty, Iga Swiatek, these players have something that makes them special, and Vondrousova has that. Like, she deserves to be here as a titleist.
And yeah, I saw Karim as well. I think that's the partner of Jabeur sobbing as well. I mean, both boxes, of course, were quite emotional. We saw 1 or 2 people in the box of Marketa Vondrousova actually crying when she had match points, but of course they were tears of joy in the end, if a little fear. I can just hear the speeches right now of Vondrousova, of course, congratulating Ons on a great run.
Jabeur, by the way, said this was the most painful defeat of her career in the runners-up speech.
Yeah, I'm glad you highlighted that. Because I was kind of trying to keep an ear on, but I've got Vance and you and me and our thoughts being shared. I'm trying to share Twitter and I'm trying to watch the TV, and of course the German speakers are speaking over it because I've got it on German TV, and I just wasn't capable of. I was barely capable of doing one of those things. Never mind 5.
Well, I'll tell you what else she said. She also said she's not going to give up. She'll come back stronger. She's willing to keep fighting.
Great, thank you, Jack. Regarding Jabeur, I do think that despite the credit that we've given to Vondrousova, and Ghibli's right to highlight that in the chat, I do think that Vondrousova can play better, and I think that Ons can play a lot better, right, Vance?
Yeah, I do believe so. I also think Vondrousova's serve has been a little underrated, in this tournament, because it's normally a second serve that can be attacked, and Ons was doing a good job sometimes on the ad side, stepping in and like really taking control of it. The problem was that the way she was trying to construct her point, she didn't give herself much margin. when she was attacking, and it always felt like she was either going way too close to the lines, or she was having to just make shots way too good, and she didn't really just trust her baseline level today, and that was quite disappointing. That's why we saw a lot of unforced errors and just a lot of like indecision in big moments, and it just kind of crept up again. And there's no doubt, like she definitely felt the nerves. Once every single time she had a lead, and I felt like
Yeah.
whenever she was down in the score, she was playing a lot more freely, and it makes a huge difference going into a final as an underdog, the way Vondrousova was versus as a favorite.
I mean, I just felt that she was consumed by it. I mean, the nerves that you can have if you walk out on court, the nerves that you can have when you're trying to serve out a match, or even just on match point where you may be shaking. I remember seeing Goran Ivanisevic's legs shaking as he was trying to serve it out 20 years ago, almost to the day at Wimbledon. 22 years ago, actually. I always get 2003 and 2001 muddled up. Of course, 2003 was the year Federer, got over the line for the first time. But but those nerves are kind of different to just a whole being consumed by a lack of belief or confidence. And I think it was there for her. I think she was the first 3 points. I thought, oh, okay, she's a bit nervous. She was down 15-30, but she held. Then she sort of seemed to breathe a bit and relax a bit. And it was Marquetta who was throwing in a few unforced errors. But from 4-2, every point that seemed to go against her, the confidence drained ever more. And it was that spell really from then until One Love, which, although she did get it back in the second set, that was the defining spell of the match that meant that Vondrousova was very close, if you like, and ultimately she did go on to win the title. But yeah, I guess the most painful defeat of her life is partly because she didn't even turn up. I mean, it was an interesting question posed a couple of days ago when I heard Miles and Nick talking. Is it worse to just get crushed, or is it worse to be super close? Like a match point or whatever. I remember Tsitsipas when he lost very, very narrow finals in 2021, and it was kind of okay because it's like he's on the right path. He's going to get there. Now he's getting crushed, and he's just not turning up in finals or in big matches. It's like, oh, this is a bigger problem. And with Ons, we've also got the age thing to consider, and I know there's plenty of people out there that are 29 and over that'll be going, listen, don't write me off yet. But it's a little bit different in tennis, and it's a bit different when you haven't got over the line and you've had chances. If you can say, look at Novak, 36, yeah, but Novak has got over the line 23 times in the past, and I think he may well get over the line for a 24th time, if not in the next 24 hours, very soon. But when you've been there 3 times, and it seems to sort of drift away rather than get closer, Jack.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm still struggling to process this one. Vance has said a few things on Twitter. I was just seeing that he said it earlier, hasn't been invested in a final for a long time. I certainly was here. My bias always shows, to be fair, but here it certainly was prevalent, and it's brutal. I honestly don't know. Maybe the question that's worth asking is, does Ons win one from here? Because I think that was her chance. Honestly, I didn't expect her to get to another final. To be fair,
it has to be at Wimbledon though, because
yeah.
I mean, you look at the French Open. It's like Iga's a big favorite there, and I don't really see it for her on the clay. And then on the hard courts, that's been her worst surface, like win percentage wise, and it just doesn't suit her game as well.
I could maybe see it on the clay if Iga was out. Obviously, that's a massive if. I don't see anybody beating Iga for years at the French, to be honest, if she keeps it up. But yeah, it's going to be Wimbledon for me as well.
She missed a chance to at least play Iga in the semis.
Yes,
I think she should have won that quarterfinal against Haddad Maia.
Yeah, could have and should have, yeah. I mean, I think I agree with you, Jack. I think it's something that Gil Gross touched on, that for her, it's a once a year, probably, because I think with the hard courts, as you suggested, I think she did really well to get to the final last year. She did really well to push Iga as much as she could. But now, a year on, the landscape of tennis is changing all the time. and it's changing in a negative sense for those of you not named Elena, Arena, or Iga. I think in terms of hard courts anyway. And I think you're right with the clay. I think she's in a group. I mean, listen, 9 months is a long time in tennis, but she's in a group on clay that are all sort of there. You know, Mukova herself, perhaps Sabalenka too, albeit that her style of game is very different. She's in a group of about 10 players who go into the French Open thinking, I might get to the final. But there's a group of one at the top of the tree, and it's almost Rafa-esque at the moment at Roland Garros. I know she was pushed this year, but anyway, and so therefore it is grass, and there's going to be, you know, how often is she going to be able to get over those matches like she did against Sabalenka and Rybakina? Because I think those two will come back even stronger next year. Those two are built to win multiple Wimbledon titles. I'll be shocked if Sabalenka never wins their Wimbledon title. I'll be shocked if Rybakina doesn't win another one. So, yeah. Anyway.
I think to touch on some stuff that Ghibli's mentioned there, you know, how much do we blame Jabeur? How much do we credit Vondrousova? I do think a lot of, and unfortunately, this is just my take on it. Obviously, I don't know what's going on in Jabeur's head, but from what I am watching, given the length of the points, given the nature of the unforced errors and the ball height, it's on Jabeur. I'm sorry, that period of time between 4-2 and 1-love, Jabeur really, really did go off the boil. And okay, these power players are giving Jabeur steady balls, not steady balls, but at least a consistent pace. You know, maybe there's a little less variety than Vondrousova, but there was easy shots that Jabeur was missing, without a doubt, and that's just objective. You can see where the ball is in the court. There's no way that Jabeur misses those without a little bit of nerves in her legs. So a lot of it's got to go on
32
Jabeur.
unforced errors today, Jack, and
you know, in the previous
some of them were.
matches,
Go on,
she
Van.
was standing up on the baseline, and with her short takebacks, she was absorbing all the pace, and she was returning really, really well, going down the line. And I felt like she was playing a lot more reactive and instinctual tennis. Whereas today, she had to be the one imposing the will. She had to be the one like coming up with the shots, and that's a whole other pressure on your own, because it requires really, really good footwork, really good positioning, and if you're nervous, then and her entire game is based on putting the ball in awkward places for the opponent, and creativity and all of that just requires such a clear thinking mind, and she didn't really have that. And I'm also looking at the serve stats, and this is kind of interesting because I praised her spot serving throughout the entire tournament, and that's something she did really, really well, mixing up her locations. Today she went almost exclusively to the Vondrousova backhand on her first serves. And I'm looking at the stats for the match total, from the match in, total first serves in. On the deuce side, she went 9 times out wide, so to the Vondrousova backhand, 4, and these are just first serves in, and then four times down the tee, and just once in the body. And then on the ad side, it was even more exclusively to the backhand. 11 out of 15 first serves, were to the Vondrousova backhand, and just 2 out wide to the forehand and 2 in the body. So
lack of
whereas
variety there on serve.
It's very predictable. And then that's why she got broken so much. And when I looked at Vondrousova, it's much more even spread, almost 40-60 down the tee and out wide, and 2 or 3 in the body on each service location. It's
I was saying halfway through the match, though, Vanch, the first serve of Vondrousova in this matchup in particular didn't make a huge difference, I would say. I don't think she won that many first serve points in the end, relative to normal stats for her, I would say. And certainly Sabalenka against Jabeur, didn't matter how hard Sabalenka was hitting the serve, it was coming back to the baseline. So it was almost like pace was helping Jabeur in a way. You really need that variety to kind of get her off the court. There were some good serves for sure, but it wasn't the defining factor for me, definitely. When there was less pace on the ball, I feel like Jabeur was struggling.
The stats at the end of the first set, I don't know how much this changed, probably significantly, but she was at 44% for first serves in at the end of the first set. And I thought that's going to be, you're going to struggle to hold serve when you're only going to get 44% of your first serves in. And I'm just going to back up what Vance said about, when you're that kind of player who relies on precision and finesse and variety and clarity of thought is so important. And as I say, it's not just you're shaking in that classic style of being nervous. It's just it just consumes you, and you just want the court to kind of swallow you up and get it all over and done with, and hope that you come out on the right side of it. But I've seen players go through spells in big finals, in big matches. I've seen Novak, even the best of them, Rafa, and so on. But they then somehow, they as Mary Carrillo said, that they choke, but they still win. About Rafa, she said it once, certainly anyway, regarding that 2019 final against Medvedev. And you could apply it for the 2022 final as well against Medvedev, and so on and so forth. But I just felt that she would never really emerged from those doldrums. I think if it had gone to a third, maybe. Go on, Jack.
I was going to say it depends the kind of player, because you can look at Jabeur and say when she gets nervy, her shots are pretty flat. There's a high chance those balls start to go out, right? If you're nervous. If you're Rafa and you've got a forehand with 55 RPM on it, chances are that forehand's going to find the court pretty much, RPS even, is going to find the court over and over again. You just spin it into play, right? So if you've got a player who can't then take advantage of the nerves, Rafa wins. Whereas Jabeur, you can be the one that just sits back and let her implode. It's a different way that nerves take hold, right? So you can be really nervous as a player and make the other player take advantage, or you can be really nervous as a player and the other player can just sit back. And Jabeur is one of the latter.
Okay, so let's conclude with the future for both of these two players. Marketa Vondrousova, can she... I see her name being peeled off. That's a nice feeling, I'm sure, as she looks back at Rebecca Barty Halep. That's another new winner, of course. We've had new winners every year since 2018, maybe? Did Serena win in 2018?
No, it was
Kerber.
Kerber, yeah.
Kerber. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, nice succession of new winners there. But listen, Vondrousova, the future, Vanch, for her. We've seen her perform well on clay and on grass. Can she have a good run in New York, or how do you see this spell of the year going for her?
I honestly have no clue, because Vondrousova is a little bit inexplicable as a tennis player. There's just no going around that. I mean, it took her, it seems like almost every other year she does something really big, when she got to the French Open final in 2019 and then silver medalist in 2021 and then now here. So it seems like I honestly don't even know what surface, because it could come anywhere. Maybe the next one will be in Australia in 2025. I don't know, or the U.S. Open. But it certainly feels like her game, like she has with the heavy topspin forehand that she has, that could be good for clay. The variety that she has on her backhand certainly helps her on grass, and then just how solid her movement is could help her on hard courts, and just in combination with everything. So I think I don't actually think surface is that much of a factor. It's just like staying healthy, and just like the depth of the tour, because it's like people were asking me on Twitter, if Jabeur were to win this match, would we now start talking about a WTA sort of big four emerging the last year or so? And we were starting to get some more stability in terms of actual rivalries, and also just 3 or 4 top women that are winning the biggest events, basically, or at least getting to the finals of all of them. But now it just, with Vondrousova winning, even though she's really, really talented, she's been in major finals before, you won't get that perception, just won't be the same, now suddenly you might shift back to that perception of if you stay healthy, anyone in the top 50 can win a major. And I don't know if that's the best thing for the women's game.
I mean, just regarding that Ons Big Four thing, I still thought, putting her there, because I think it was a now or never moment, and that's what makes today all the sadder. If you're prepared, and I think I heard somebody, or 1 or 2 people say, if she wins, she's in the Big Four. If she does, but that's not how it works. To be a member of the Big Four is you are there week in, week out. You are in Indian Wells final. You're in Miami semi-final. You're in Australian Open final, you're in French Open semi-final, and so on and so forth. Then you remember, whether you get over the line sometimes and sometimes you don't, because you run into ego on clay or whatever. And I just felt that for Ons, it was never a case of her entering a so-called elite group and therefore just dominating tennis for the next couple of years or even longer, as we've seen on the men's side. And I think it's supported by the fact that all 3 of us felt it was now or never for Ons. Anyway, Jack,
Yeah, I
what
think
about
this one,
Vondrousova in the
this one
future?
also hurts
Come on,
more.
Bash.
I think, sorry, just one last point. I think
Yeah,
this
sure.
one almost hurts more because like last year you could have said, okay, like she should have got to the final with that kind of a draw, you know, and
Yeah.
things really, really opening up for her. You know, she didn't play anyone in the top 30 until the final. Whereas this time it's like she went through all the big hurdles. She did all of that after having gone through a knee surgery earlier in the year where she skipped the Middle East swing and then wasn't healthy in Australia and then, you know, okay, somehow won Charleston, but she hasn't really been in. She wasn't really in any of our mixes to like. I mean, she was maybe like a top 5 or top 6 contender, just because we know how good she has been in terms of her pedigree. But no one really thought, okay, Ons Jabeur is winning Wimbledon this year. But I think once she got to the final, that's when like, how can you not believe at that point? You know, when you've beaten Rybakina and Sabalenka and Kvitova and Andreescu, it's like, if you don't win this now, you do all that effort and you get all the way to the very end. It's like, yeah, it's that's the most brutal thing about it, because at least last year you could have been like, okay, the step up from like Tatiana Maria to Rybakina is huge. So like you can't like she wasn't really prepared for that moment. So you can kind of understand. Whereas here it's like, yeah, you really, you know, this was yours for the taking. So
I'm very confused by a lookalike of Kate Middleton wearing a pink jacket, wandering around, but it's actually not Kate Middleton. So there seems to be a doppelganger, and they've actually also found her to guide Marketa Vondrousova around the bowels of the Wimbledon place. Anyway, Jack, listen, let's have a quick word on Vondrousova and the short-term future. Fingers crossed she can stay healthy. She missed 3 of the 4 slams in 2022. She's going through a good spell of fitness right now. Fingers crossed she can remain that way. Will she be? Will we go into, you know, if the US Open was next week, would you be thinking of her of going far?
It's still kind of what Van said. Let me kind of sum up Vondrousova's game quickly. The reason I didn't have her going too far in this tournament, she's a great player. Like, she is a great player. She is not the kind of player that's gonna smack you off the court. I touched on that earlier with what I was saying her best weapon was. It's that lefty forehand that kind of locks you in, right? And I expected a power player to win this tournament. I thought she was getting knocked out by Vekic in the 3rd round. I did say Pegula at her best. We did both say Vondrousova was going to win that, but Pegula ended up becoming very close, obviously. It was 4-1, 30-40, and Vondrousova comes back from the depths and wins 5 games in a row, right? Vondrousova is a player that I would expect to go far if the draw opens up, and that's kind of what happened here, right? She took advantage of the players that were in front of her. You still have to play very well to do that. You still have to beat every player in front of you. Vondrousova absolutely did a very good job of doing that. I would still expect her to get beaten by the biggest hitters on the tour, Iga and Rybakina and Sabalenka. But if she plays the rest of the tour, Vondrousova's got a shot for sure, definitely.
I almost feel, I mean, she's a lot younger, but it was kind of her moment today, and she took advantage of it. And I do think that little spell probably helped her a bit. I mean, it was also a difficult one in beating Kudermetova, who I had in my final, Vekic, who you had in your final. Coming through those 2 matches in straight sets, I thought, okay, that's a really tricky 2nd and 3rd round. So once she gets to the 4th round, I'm now thinking she could make the final, because I wasn't convinced about Iga, and I thought she's just, and I'm not saying I predicted her to get to the final, and certainly didn't predict her to win it even at that stage, but she was in a group. I mean, anyone could have got to that final on their day, as we saw from some of the random results that materialized.
I want to ask Van something actually as well, in case he noticed this, because I don't know how true this is. This is just conjecture. It looks like the courts were playing quite slow this year. I don't know how true that is.
I think what happens is that we watch those lead-up tournaments pre-Wimbledon, and you know, and a lot of times we do make our predictions. A lot of that based on form, and all that is good, because like we don't have that much data. But I feel like they play a lot faster than Wimbledon does now. Yeah. Like especially like Stuttgart is so fast. Like, you know, the Netherlands, like Berlin, like pretty much all these tournaments are so much faster than Wimbledon. Wimbledon is like maybe the slowest grass court tournament now.
Yeah, which I mean is telling, right? And that would be advantage Vondrousova every time. If you can lock somebody into that kind of position where they feel like they've got sort of no escape, you're
Yeah.
going to win the point kind of 7
But
times
she
out of
deals
10.
with the low bounce very well as well. So if it's slow and low bouncing, it's perfect for it. It makes sense. Honestly, it makes no sense how Vondrousova only had 3 or 4 grass wins before this tournament started, because like her game should work on this surface, you would think. And a lot of that was probably just injuries and form and just general confidence. Because
I was totally saying that Vondrousova's game wouldn't work on grass. Honestly, Vanch, I was like, not that it would be rubbish, but just if the courts were a lot quicker, I thought somebody was going to hit her off the court, and that just didn't happen. So I'm just wondering if the courts are just a little bit slower than they normally are, if that makes any difference. I don't know.
I saw a lot of these players play in Berlin up close. I saw Sabalenka lose to Kudermetova, and that actually made me think, okay, Kudermetova maybe, because the way she played that day really impressed me. I thought, okay, from that half of the draw, it was as a pick'em or whatever the expression is in the US, where you just have no clue. And I went for Kudermetova, and as I said before, I know that you went for Vekic, and of course I saw Vekic up close, beating Rybakina. I actually thought that was a really impressive win. I thought Rybakina, I know she cited illness later, but I thought it was a really competitive match and was really close and could have gone either way. And congrats to Vekic. She got to the final there. I was super impressed with so many of the players that I saw there that, of course, were competing at Wimbledon. And it gave me the belief that Kudermetova could go all the way. But I did see Vondrousova play really well against Yulia Niemeyer, I think it was. Niemeyer actually pulled out hurt, but she was on the ropes, let's say. I think she was down a set, and it was 6-all in the second. And I thought, okay, yeah. I mean, if you'd have told me then that she's only ever won 2 matches on grass before, and they were both that same week, I think she made it 3 in the end, didn't she? I just didn't know that fact. That's just astonishing that you can be 24 years old and have so few wins or 0 wins on a surface. It's just nuts.
Yeah. Also,
she's 5th in the race.
She was down break point 4-1 in the third, like break point for 5-1 to Pegula.
Pegula, yeah.
In the quarters, and that was going on the same time as the Svitolina-Swiatek match on court 1. Mm-hmm. So, like, there were multiple times, even in this tournament, where even against Bushkova, I think she was down a break point for Bushkova to go up 3-1 in the third. So, there's always those like little moments. And I also saw her play Andreescu in Berlin, and I was pretty impressed with her level then. I was like, okay, wow, she's changing. She's hitting her forehand down the line really big. She's serving good spots. She's not missing. Like it's definitely like not out of nowhere that like she's gone on a run, but to actually win the thing it's pretty different.
Jabeur's run for me came a bit out of nowhere. It did in Paris and it did here, because what we saw between Paris and here was a first round exit in Berlin, and her saying that she rushed back for Paris, and that kind of materialized in the end.
Yes.
So actually, it's Jabeur's run that is equally surprising for me in a way, despite her track record.
Yeah, I think just looking at a few of her previous losses, by the way, I just wanted to mention that for Vondrousova, just to kind of prove this point, I guess. She's losing to players,
right?
Yeah, exactly. You've got like Sabalenka, you've got Samsonova, Sakkari, Raducanu, all players that are going to hit the racket out of your hands. And I mean, she did play Vekic, to be fair. She did play Kudermetova. These, ladies can hit the ball pretty big. But yeah, it's still one I'm going to take a while to process, I think, guys.
Yep, fair enough. There's plenty of interesting things going on in the chat about loser speeches, but that's probably for another day. I certainly think I certainly wouldn't want to see losers. If you don't want to speak, that's fine. But in general, I've seen some really tough ones for Roger even, and I remember in Australia when he said, "This is tough for me" in 2009, when Rafa, of course, had to return the favour, if you like, in 2017, and also today, really tough for Ons to speak. But I think Ons would probably have liked to speak to the audience, despite the anguish that she would have been suffering. And I certainly don't like the philosophy outside of the slams, which is if you lose, you don't do a press conference, pretty much. Which I don't know. I think I don't mind skipping a few press conferences if it's a really tough one or you're feeling sick or whatever. But generally, I'd rather the media get a chance to speak to the players, because if you're a fan, you love to hear from your player in success and in defeat. And that's my thoughts on it. But probably do that one for another day. Jack, it's a difficult one for Ons today. It's a great one for Kudermetova. Vanch, do you want to give it a go?
But yeah.
What did I say?
Kudermetova.
Oh dear, dear, oh dear! It's a parallel universe. Kudermetova. I've only had one Shandy so far. Vanch, do you have something called Shandy in the US?
You'll have Shandies, right?
I think I've seen it. Yeah.
You think you've seen it? So it's lemonade with beer, basically. It's like half strength beer. But Vanch's suggestion that he thinks he's seen it suggests it's not commonplace in the US. Anyway, Vanch, would you like to try? And you're more than welcome. Hi, Adam. Oh, you don't know this guy, do you, Jack? Adam he's from Glasgow.
Adam Williamson.
So I know him. I lived with him for 3 months in Santander in the north of Spain.
I don't know Adam Williamson.
Oh,
no.
okay. But he's saying it's a small world. I wasn't sure if he knew you then. But he's
Wait,
Glaswegian, I think. He's a Celtic fan, I think. Or is he Rangers? No, I think he could be Rangers. He is Rangers, actually.
Well, I'm neither. Don't worry.
I know. That's a debate for another day. Listen, Vanch, what I keep wanting to say is, how confident do you feel about seeing out this show with my if you enjoyed this or whatever it is?
Oh yeah.
Do you want to try it?
Yeah.
I'll repeat it afterwards by pressing the button, but give it a go.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.
Wow, that's good.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.